Hi guys! Today's vlog is actually going to be on a fish, and a lot of you have probably had them before or you know somebody who's had them. They are bettas, otherwise known as Siamese fighting fish. I just wanted to kind of give you guys some information on what it is you need to take care of a betta essentially, and for the most part it's a pretty low maintenance fish. You don't really have to do a whole lot for them, and they don't need a whole lot. You don't have to have a huge setup like what you normally do with a regular aquarium. Bettas are used to keeping themselves in sort of a little bit of a smaller environment, and not real small. We're talking about maybe anywhere from about a liter up to about maybe a gallon or a couple of gallons. They usually do best, and you can put them in something smaller, but general rule of thumb is the more space you can give an animal, the better. Bettas can usually go inside a community tank of freshwater fish, but usually you only want to have one male betta per your tank. You can have multiple female bettas, but you have to be careful about putting in other different kinds of fish. There are some fish that are going to be aggressive towards bettas, and there are some fish that bettas would be aggressive toward. To kind of just cover what it is that you actually need to have for a betta, it's pretty simple stuff. You're basically looking at like 4 or 5 different elements. I think it's mostly 4. You're normally looking at doing, obviously, the environment that you're going to be putting them into. So a lot of times people, they'll actually get just a glass bowl. They'll have little kits that you can actually buy at a pet store that are fun little kid kind of kits. Some are like Little Mermaid, and Finding Nemo is a real popular one. So you can do pretty much any kind of container that is roughly about a liter at least. So a lot of times people will have a real decorative vase that they'll put the fish into. So it's really up to you what you want to do with it, as long as you clean it out really well. Make sure that you're doing just kind of a mild dish soap. Actually works really well. Dawn, Joy, something like that. Rinse it out really well. And then you're also looking at adding in your substrate, which is your gravel, or some people like to do, you know, smooth stones. Some people like to do marbles. Whatever you want to do is up to you. The basic purpose of that is to disguise all the waste and the uneaten food that's in the bottom of the dish. So what you decide to do is up to you. It's mostly for aesthetics, besides kind of hiding everything. Beyond that, you're looking at putting in decorations, or at least one decoration. You can put in a plant, a statue, whatever it is. It's got to be something that the fish can hide behind or hide within. You know, it's going to be a security factor for them. And then beyond that, you're looking at your betta food, which bettas do require a specific kind of food. They're more of a carnivorous fish. So usually you have to do food that is betta specific because it's going to have a higher protein count to it. And beyond that, you're looking at a water conditioner. And the main reason that you want to use a water conditioner is that even if you're using water that comes from a tap that's been run through a filter, there are still going to be elements within that water that the fish really shouldn't be exposed to. And I'm talking about different chemicals, and most of the heavy metals are filtered out if you've got something attached to your faucet. But if you just do straight tap water without running it through a filter, what the water conditioner is going to do is it's going to neutralize the harmful elements of that water that could eventually become detrimental to the fish. So it's talking about chlorine, chloramine. Some places in the US and maybe other countries as well might have fluoride in the water. I know they do that in general for your teeth. And then there's heavy metals that are in there, and so a water conditioner is going to neutralize those elements and essentially make the water safe for the fish to be in. The main thing you want to be careful about is that you rinse everything down. Like I said, you want to wash out the container they're going into, but you do want to rinse off any decorations that you put in there, and also the gravel. And in order to do that, you're going to take your bag, and it's usually, you can get like a 5-pound bag and it works just fine. What you're going to do is you're going to take like some kind of a bucket or an ice cream pail or something like that. You're going to put the gravel in it, and then you're going to take some cool water and you're going to fill it to a point where all the gravel is submerged. And what you're going to do is you're going to kind of stick your hand in there and you're going to swish it around, and you're going to see a lot of different debris and sort of probably little plastic pieces and whatnot float to the surface, and you want to remove that stuff. That's rinsing the gravel. So you don't want the fish accidentally ingesting some of that, because fish don't care. They eat pretty much anything that's floating in the water. So once you've got that all rinsed down and everything, you're going to put your water in. You don't want to use distilled water. There's absolutely no value to it. There's nothing good for the fish that's in that water. I would just say use regular, either drinking water if you want to be, you know, really conscientious about it, you're still going to want to use a water conditioner regardless, or tap water. And you're going to want to make sure it's hard water. Hard water tends to be best for fish, just because soft water has to run through the soft water conditioner unit, whatever it's called, and the salts that are in that can sometimes be harmful to fish when it's in certain amounts. So use hard water and make sure you're using the conditioner. And then once you have the water in the actual container, what you're going to want to do, if you have the betta already, you're going to want to have the betta sitting next to the container or in the same room. It doesn't have to be right next to it, but you want them basically in the same atmosphere temperature wise, because you want the temperatures to even out between the water the fish is going to be going into and the water that it's currently in. Main reason you're doing that is because you want to avoid temperature shock, and this goes for pretty much all fish. A lot of times if you've got fish from a pet store, they'll send home the fish in a bag, and usually what they'll recommend is that you float the bag in the tank for about 45 minutes to an hour, or sometimes a half hour, whatever you want to do. And that's basically what it's doing, is it's equalizing the temperatures between the water the fish is in and what's in the tank. And the main reason you want to do that to avoid temperature shock is what happens, especially with bettas, because this is very important for them with how they breathe. Bettas don't actually get their oxygen from the water itself. Most fish, when you've got the filter and the aerator on your tank, you're going to be getting oxygen that's in the water that's going to be running over the fish's gills, and that's how they get their oxygen. But with bettas, they actually get their oxygen from the surface of the water, and so in order to do that, they need to be able to float to the surface of the water so they can kind of gulp down air. If you ever go to a pet store, watch bettas sometime, and you'll actually see them kind of go up to the surface of the air, and it almost looks like they're trying to eat something out of the top of the water, but they're actually gulping down air, basically, and that's how they get their oxygen. So when it comes to temperature shock, what happens essentially is that it causes what we call float bladders. It's what keeps the fish buoyant, allows them to float. It causes those float bladders to essentially fail, and they will deflate. And what happens then is with bettas, they'll actually sink to the bottom of their container, and when the float bladders aren't filled, they can't get to the surface of the water. Ergo, they will suffocate and essentially drown. So it's really important to make sure that you don't cause temperature shock with your fish, because that's going to be a big problem. Otherwise, you may end up losing your fish. So once you get your water temperatures evened out, your water conditioner added, and you really don't have to do much for a water conditioner. It's usually about 7 drops per gallon of water. So it's going to last you for a while. If you can find something, there's a brand called API. That's actually what I use for my big tank, but there is one that's by Tetra out there. I think it's called Betta Safe. I believe I've got it for my bettas. And I've had the same bottle for quite a while, and it's lasted me for a good bit of time. So I would probably recommend, if you wanted to do the API brand, there is one that's out there that actually has, I think it's called Stress Coat, something along those lines. But essentially what it has is aloe vera in it, and it provides a sort of protective slime shield around the fish. So it kind of protects them against bacterial agents that can get into the water. So once you've got your water in the tank, your water conditioner in, and the temperature equalized, you can basically add the fish right to it. You don't really have to worry about doing anything with water changing for probably about 1.5 to 2 months. Main reason being, if you do that, you're going to be sort of kicking the tank back to the sort of beginning point, kind of square one. And the main reason for that is because all fish tanks have to go through the nitrogen cycle, and there's going to be different bacteria that are going to develop within that cycle, and I'll go through all of this at another point a little bit more in depth. But point being, you want that cycle to be able to sort of establish itself so that it's going to be almost like the fish is in a natural environment in that sense. So that's kind of the basics of what you need to do for a betta. You're only going to be feeding them, you know, a couple pieces of food. If you do a pelleted food, you're only going to be doing that maybe once or twice a week. You really don't have to feed them very often, and if you feed them too much, it's going to compromise your water quality and ultimately the health and safety of your fish. If you're planning on getting a betta, I hope this helped. Otherwise, we'll see you guys next time. Peace.